All doctors to the ER.
Welcome back to part 3. Where does Amy and Argent go from here? We'll find out together. Where this ends up, it may shock you. If you haven't watched part 1 or 2 yet, please look in the description below. Those videos will be linked there. It will definitely be worth your while. So, without further hesitation, let's begin. When I awoke, I realized I was in the middle of a river of dead bodies. I gagged and spit salt water, flooding my lungs, and I fought to keep breathing. The body smashed into me, enormous waves pushing and pulling and sucking me underwater. I was pulled under, salt water flooding my lungs again, and I felt myself on the verge of convulsing. Suddenly, I felt the bodies part, and I clawed my way back to the surface. Salt water exploded from my nose like a fountain of blood gushing from an open wound. I managed to grab and hold a piece of timber that came rushing past me. I pulled myself onto it. My fingernails popped and tore as I dug my fingers into the shredded bark. But at least my head was above the water. Only then did I realize where I was. I was in the midst of a great flood, cutting a path through an enormous forest. It was like I was in water released from an enormous dam, as the flood rushed without thought or purpose. It was pure, unreleased chaos, and I could feel its anger tearing apart the forest by the light of an enormous full moon, which hung low, filling almost the entire night sky. I could see myself lifted above the forest, rushing past the tops of trees. Where was it rushing from? Keeping a firm grip on a piece of wood, I struggled to look behind me, as bodies and parts of bodies smashed into me. A wave caught me, and I spun, twisting me around. I wiped the salt water from my eyes. It was huge, more than 100 feet tall, maybe 200 feet tall. It towered over the tops of the trees we were rushing past, and more than 100 feet wide, and it wasn't moving with the water, even as the enormous waves smashed against it. The black, stalwart, sinewy body swayed from side to side, but it wasn't falling. It looked like it was standing up. My eardrums exploded in pain, and my world exploded into fire. My eardrums, are they bleeding? It feels like they're bleeding, but I didn't dare move my hands, so I put my head down, gritted my teeth, and prayed that my eardrums could survive the onslaught. Then suddenly, it stopped, my ears ringing. I looked up. The body was moving, growing. There were things extending from its sides. Long, slender legs, like an octopus. Tentacles, hundreds of them. They grew and grew in all directions, until they blotted out the moon. Everywhere. They were everywhere above me, and I was underneath in their shadow. Then, with a horrifying cracking sound, the tentacles then started to drop. Vomit erupted from my mouth, coating the front of my gray sweatshirt. I felt seasick, as the salt water and the dead bodies were washed out by the sounds and smells of Tomi Hospital. Arjun's heart monitor beeped as I grabbed hold of his hospital bed to steady myself, but the waves threatened to pull me under, and I started to slide off my chair. Suddenly, I felt someone grab me. Holy shit, Amy. You okay? My heart jumped uncomfortably in my chest. Jack, hi. My back was cramped and sore from the uncomfortable hospital chair. I must have fallen asleep waiting for Argent to wake up after being wheeled out of surgery. You got my text? I checked the time. Almost 1 o'clock. It had been almost 4 hours since I'd basically crashed in the emergency lane at Tomi and threw Arjun on a gurney myself. When did you get here? Just got here. He gestured to his EMT uniform. I'm on lunch break. Jack was a pre-med at the nearby Columbia College and worked at Tomi Hospital part-time as an EMT. Arjun left a voicemail saying that he'd gotten into a car accident, but then you texted me to meet you here. I don't understand. Were you with him? Paula. Leaving my house in the middle of the night, crashing at Arjun's, discovering that Arjun has been investigating my sister's disappearance, the photos of the missing girls, all 10 girls, missing. Then suddenly, hearing something outside, black SUVs rushing towards Arjun's house, making a break for it, and Arjun getting shot. Then, the car window shot out, glass everywhere. Arjun leaving Jack a panicked voicemail, then passing out. Me seeing all the blood, deciding to take Arjun to the hospital instead. But his questions just washed over me like the salt water in my dream. I was covered in vomit. God, this is so gross, I whimpered. As I desperately searched for a rag or a towel or anything I could use to clean myself, Jack noticed. Amy Belle, here, let me help you. He helped me pull off the gray sweatshirt. His old nickname for me? I caught a glimpse of myself in the full-length mirror. I looked sick, sweaty, and my tight white t-shirt and the matching gray sweatpants looked dirty and wrinkled. My heart twisted. God, I looked terrible. Jesus, Amy, Jack said slowly. Why are there shards of glass in your face? He reached out to touch them. And all down your arm, too? He stood up and started bustling around. From the cabinets, he pulled out gauze, rubbing alcohol, and tweezers. Let me get that glass out. Come on, dude. Stop. I tried to push him away. I could feel tears in my eyes, and I was trying not to get overwhelmed. But he was too close to me, and I wasn't sure what to do, or what to say. The last 3 years of unanswered text messages and unanswered feelings hung like a curtain between us. It didn't help that he looked exactly the same, too. Same dark eyes, same dark skin. His dreads were a little longer, I noticed. But that was it. He was wearing new glasses, too. I wonder if the new girlfriend got those glasses for him. He grabbed my hands, interrupting my thoughts. You'll get infected if the glass hasn't come out. Seriously, Jack Jenkins? Threatening me with infection. Could you just... He held up his hands. How about this? For every glass shard I pull out of your face, I get to ask a question. After all, I did get a frantic phone call from Arjun this morning, who insisted I meet him. Then, I got an equally frantic text from you saying that Arjun was in surgery. He does have a point. Fine, I relented. Thank you, he said, snippily. He then dug a little too happily in my face, and I winced. Okay, there. First question. Why did Arjun want to meet at my house, and not the hospital? I sighed. I'm not sure. Maybe he doesn't have health insurance? I sighed again. He passed out before I could get an answer from him. Jack nodded, then leaned in again. God, he even smelled the same. There. Okay. Question 2. Why did you bring him to the hospital instead? I sighed. Because Arjun's got that heart condition, and he was dying, and he was being an idiot, and he'd just gotten shot. Shit. The truth slipped out. Shit. I pressed the heels of my hands into my forehead. There was so much happening, and I was just so tired. Jack stopped short too. Wait, shot? Like with a gun? I thought you said in the text that it was just a car accident. It was kind of that too, Jack interrupted me. Amy, he grabbed the sides of my face. My skin burned where he touched me. Be honest with me. Is this a drug thing? A drug thing? Of course he thought it was that. That's all I'll ever be to him. Every pill, every mistake, the 5 years I spent dating him reared up like a snake, threatening to bite. Those little words tore me apart, tore my chest apart, like I was nothing, because I was nothing, especially to Jack Jenkins. No, Jack, it wasn't a drug thing. Then, what is it? His grip tightened. It's been 3 years, Amy. 3 years since I've heard from you, since I've seen you, since any of us besides Arjun has seen you. 3 years since. 3 years since the worst days of my life. We were at a picnic organized by our parents. We were all there, including all our parents. Everyone except my mom. Mine and Jack's 5th-year anniversary was coming up. We felt it was a big accomplishment at the age of 18. Part of that, though, was the condition that I quit abusing Xanax and alcohol. Jack thought I was quitting, but he thought that because I told him I was. And honest to God, I tried. I really did. But every time I did quit, and I flushed those pills down the drain, that's when the feelings started happening again. And the only way to stop them was to make myself numb. Jack caught me with a pill bottle, and ended it right then and there. "Hey, Amy." Jack gently tapped the palms of my hands. "Hey, you went somewhere." I forced myself back into the present. The dreams dissipated, leaving me in my disappointing reality. His words layered me like concrete, pushing my feelings down even further. I felt numb and cold. What? His eyes looked sad, resigned. "Why did you come back, Amy?" "Because Paul is back, Jack," I said simply. "And I need you to contact Louise for me, because I'm pretty sure he knows why." The look on his face was priceless, but I suddenly felt sick. The words had felt like bile and acid. They burned, leaving my mouth, and I felt like they were slowly eating me alive. I stood up, feeling a little wobbly in the knees. "Here." I handed him my phone. "There's a video I need you to see." Jack took it. "Code? All zeros." Jack punched it in. The phone lit up. He looked at me, and his lip curled for a brief moment. Tight security. But I ignored him. "I'm going to get some food. Please keep an eye on Arjun until I get back. The second he awakes, we need to leave." My stomach grumbled as I walked down the hall from Arjun's room. I was looking for vending machines. They'd put him in a recovery room upstairs in the northeast wing. Told Hospital was in the shape of a perfect square, with hallways running north-south and east-west. At the entrance there was a help desk, which welcomes you in, surrounded by a ring of offices and blood-testing lab facilities. The trauma center, where Arjun had been wheeled into, and urgent care are also on the first floor. Upstairs on the second, third, and fourth floors, you'd find the more specialist units, such as cardiology or coronary care unit, intensive care unit, neurology, cancer center, and obstetrics and gynecology. There, found them. I wandered over to the familiar blue light like a moth to flame. I rested my forehead against the cool glass as the events from this morning washed over me. Arjun got shot, I thought, because of me. My throat felt thick and I struggled to swallow. I forced myself to fight back tears. Arjun could have died. As that man in the white suit shot into the goddamn car, the sensation of exploding glass gripped me again and again. Another person dead. Because of me. My breathing got short, and the edges of my vision started to go white. "No, calm down." I balled my hand into fist and forced myself to breathe deep. You could not afford a panic attack. Not now. With everything that was swimming around in my brain, there was only two things that I knew for certain at this moment. One, I hadn't eaten since yesterday, and that stale bag of Cheetos in the row E4 was looking delicious. And two, me and Arjun needed to get the hell out of this hospital. I wasn't sure where we'd go, but maybe my apartment? We could hide out there until we figured out what to do. I wiped the tears from my eyes and punched in the 4 quarters. The Cheetos fell, and I bent down to pick them up. In the reflection of the glass, I suddenly recognized someone very familiar, starting to walk up the hallway behind me. Hide. I need somewhere to hide. Desperate, I scanned the hallway and the series of offices, with doors emblazoned with names that I assumed were doctors and specialists. Then, supply closet. Without a second to lose, I opened the door and ducked inside, my heart pounding. I listened as my mother walked into the office directly next to me. "Jay," my mother's shrill voice slurred, "do you think it's wise to keep calling these meetings? Especially with everything that's happening." "The reason I called you here, Cassandra." A voice I'd recognize anywhere answered her. It was Dr. Lincoln's. My blood ran cold. I started to panic. I can't get caught. I can't get caught. Not now. To steady myself, I shoved my hands into my pockets of my sweatpants. There was something hard in them. I pulled it out. It was the tape recorder I always kept on me. Without even thinking, I turned it on. "Your daughter is missing." "I beg your pardon, Jay?" She sounded drunk. My blood curdled at the sound. "She's at home." "Where else?" Dr. Jenkins interrupted her. "Not that daughter." I heard exasperation in his voice. "Amy. Where the hell did Amy go?" I was feeling lightheaded. Holy shit, they were looking for me? There was a crack of light where the supply closet connected to Dr. Lincoln's office. I could see through it and see my mother standing in her powder blue skirt suit, looking down at Dr. Lincoln's, who was sitting behind his mahogany desk. My mother's tone was loud and dismissive. "How should I know? She's probably back at school." "You don't know?" Dr. Lincoln's put his fist down hard on his desk. "You don't know? She's not at school, nor her apartment. We checked this morning, and she's not at your house either. So I ask again, where is she?" "Why do you care?" "We care." I suddenly realized my mother and Dr. Lincoln's weren't alone in his office. There was a group of adults sitting in there with them, including Arjun's parents, Arjav and Raji. His mother, Raji, sounded like she'd been crying. My heart twisted. I love Arjun's parents. They ran a chain of candy shops in Grovefield, and I used to love getting candy from all of them as a kid. Even now, as an adult, it was such an instant hit of euphoric happiness every time I visited. I was happy when they were still open, considering that I've never actually seen anyone buy anything there. Because apparently, there's been a shooting on Connor Street, and Arjun. "Your son was involved in that?" My mother suddenly sounded shocked. "Is he okay?" "But the church said that the man in white, Arjun's fine," Arjav, his dad, spoke up. I couldn't see them, not in the position I was sitting in, but his voice sounded sharp, electric. "He's alive, for now, but apparently he was shot. He's at the hospital, in room 182. I was flabbergasted. His parents know he was shot? Do they know why? Why haven't they done anything? My brain was spinning in circles, and suddenly I was having a hard time breathing. But before we go see him, we need to know what they know. "Cassandra," Jay spoke up again. He sounded closer to me. He must be leaning back in his chair. "This is starting to unravel, and at the center of it are your daughters." "My daughters?" Her voice positively dripped acid. Her tone went scary low and quiet. "They're such a tiny part of this. How dare you insinuate that that Amy, the drunk and the almost dropout, or that my Paula would, even the tiniest thread," Arjav suddenly whispered, "can pull apart the greatest tapestry." His voice was low. I could barely hear him. "And you, in your arrogance and blind faith, brought that loose end home." Anger was thickening in his voice. "You brought that thing home and exposed Amy." Arjav was cut off as I suddenly heard my mother slap him hard across the face. "How dare you!" she kept shrieking. As I heard the pandemonium in his office, chairs scuffed hard against the floor, stacks of binders were shoved, and a desk lamp was overturned. "How dare you call her that?" "Calm down." Dr. Lincoln sprang to his feet and forced them apart. "Cassandra, stop. Calm down." I spotted my mother through the crack of the door. Her blue suit was disheveled, and her shiny exterior shell was beginning to crack. Dr. Lenkins turned a chair upright and gently pushed her to sit. We just need to know, has Paula said anything to you, to Amy, to your husband? Specifically, has she said anything to you about the mountain? My mother was sitting perfectly still, her posture as stiff and unforgiving as that chair. Her hands twisted the strap of her powdered blue handbag, like she was twisting the top off of a Diet Coke bottle. No, she hasn't said anything. Her handbag was clinking gently. In fact, her voice was thick with emotion. She hasn't said anything at all. She also doesn't eat. She doesn't do anything. She's a shell. She was crying harder now, with her elbows on her knees and her hands cradling her head. After all these years, I still don't understand. She wasn't supposed to be taken. I was promised. She looked at Dr. Lenkins with red-rimmed eyes. I did everything right. I loved the church, and this is how I'm repaid? Jesus, Cassandra, the same old shit. Suddenly, another voice, a man standing to the right of Dr. Lenkins' desk. I couldn't see him, but I'd recognize that voice too. It was Luis and Daphne's father. You aren't the only one missing a child. Their father was a quiet but imposing man. Roger Tiths owned a series of incredibly successful laundromats, and he moved to Grovefield right after Daphne was born, and right after he lost their mother to a horrific car accident. The driver had walked, not only from his destroyed vehicle, but from the following case trial as well. Roger had lost everything. He moved to Grovefield right after his 2 daughters were born, a newborn and a 9-year-old. And he'd always said that it was his only chance to recover what he lost. My mother sniffled. She was a pitiful sight. But you have your business at least. Yes, but Daphne wasn't part of the deal. But turned to Dr. Lenkins. Neither was Paula. We have only 3 weeks until. He paused. But it feels different this time. Stronger. He paused again. He sounded different. It took a moment to realize why. He sounded scared. It feels unbalanced, he murmured. Do you think the head knows why, Jay? Jesus, how can you say that? Dr. Lenkins retorted loudly. God, no. If the heads find out, all of our kids, Amy, Arjun, Jack, Louise, they're all dead. We're dead. Anybody connected to this? Jesus, I thought to myself, horrified. What is going on? What are my parents involved in? I want out. My mother sniffed loudly. I want to be done. The room went silent. Nobody said anything except for my mother's loud sniffs. You can't get out, Cassie. You know that. Dr. Lenkins finally said softly. We all went to that mountain for a reason. He looked tired, haggard, and he was wearing a white lab coat over black, wrinkled scrubs. As he bent down to pick up the blinders that had knocked down to the floor, I noticed something. There were thick, black leather bracelets encircling his wrists like handcuffs. They were strapped tight to his skin, practically cutting off the circulation. It looked like his wrists were bleeding. No, that's not blood, I suddenly realized. Thin black vines extended from the bracelets and were burrowing themselves into his skin. I recoiled. And now we need to deal with the consequences. Suddenly, my legs gave out. I tried to stop myself, but I fell hard, accidentally knocking over a stack of buckets. I heard someone cry out in Dr. Lenkins' office, but I didn't wait to see who it was. I turned off the tape recorder and sprinted into the hallway. Arjun was just waking up by the time I made it back. Jack was standing over him, helping him sit up. The hospital computer was beeping frantically, and in one furious motion, I bent down and unplugged it. It went silent. Amy, what the hell? Jack said. I gripped his arm hard. We need to leave. Now. I couldn't think straight. All I could see were those black bracelets burrowing themselves into Jack's dad's arm. I turned to Arjun. Can you walk? Amy? Arjun was loopy, I could tell, but surprisingly coherent. He was struggling to sit up, but the drug's effects were slowly wearing off. Hey, Amy. He grabbed my hand. Hey, you didn't leave me back there. Thank you. Oh, Arjun. I cupped his hand and brought it to my cheek. For a brief second, I forgot about Dr. Lincoln's. I forgot about the bracelets. I forgot about my mom running down the hallway to find me. Don't even say that. Intense relief washed over me. He was alive. Of course I didn't leave you. You had the car keys. Arjun chuckled, sitting up, but his expression quickly turned sour. Wait, are we in a hospital? Jack leaned over to help him up. Amy felt like because of the seriousness of your leg, you needed more serious help. Shit, Arjun said, cutting him off. I mean, thank you, but I don't think you realize that. What? That all our parents are involved in this, including Jack's dad, Dr. J. Lincoln's? I finished the sentence for him. I handed him his blue robe from earlier and gray tracksuit that Jack had brought. Wait, my dad's involved in what? Jack asked, shocked. I overheard them. He's here. All of our parents are here, in this hospital. I was helping Arjun up. And they know. Know about what? About this, I gestured wildly. About me ditching my parents' house. About Arjun getting shot. About Paula coming back as this messed up demonic shell. I could feel my mother's words echoing inside me. We need a plan. Wait, hold up. Jack held up his hands. What does my dad have to do with that? He pointed to my phone. And with Paula coming back. Because, for starters, he was the first person to see her, besides that ranger and my parents. He was with her every second she spent in this godforsaken hospital. I was at the end of my rope. I could practically feel my mother racing down the hall to catch me. We needed to leave. Now. And he didn't say anything to you? Don't you find that a little suspicious? But Jack was shaking his head. There's gotta be some sort of explanation. We need to leave. I'll explain on the way. I picked up Arjun's bag and helped him up. Everything else we had was in the Pontiac, along with Milo and Monroe, who were waiting for us. Wait, shit. I paused in the doorway. Where should we go? My apartment's out. Jack's dad was there this morning, I said, panicking. Arjun's home is out. My parents' house has this frickin' thing crawling in it. But Jack interrupted me. The cabin. You could hide out there for as long as you need. Duh. The cabin. I didn't even think of that. That was the perfect place. You sure? But he was nodding. The elevators dinged, and we descended to the ground floor. We were almost out. The parking lot was right through the entrance doors. I could practically see the Pontiac from where we were, in the back corner, where I'd haphazardly parked this morning. Jesus, the Pontiac looked bad. There was glass everywhere, all over the passenger seat, and the entire back seat was coated in blood. Jack took off his jacket and laid it down before helping Arjun into the back seat. Monroe and Milo went crazy, whining and licking him. I paused, my hand resting on the door handle. Look, Stop. Gently grabbed my arm. He turned me around to face him, but I couldn't stop. The words just kept pouring out. Look, I just wanted to thank you. Amy, stop. He brushed a curl from where it had fallen over my eye. I'm coming too. My heart thudded. Your what? He nodded. After my shift. He started walking back towards his car, an old beat-up white Subaru. After all, I've got to finish fixing you up, he called out. You still remember where the cabin is? Oh, I remember. I was on Main Street, heading out of town. Arjun had passed out, as the adrenaline from this morning wore off, and the events from this morning knocked him out. I'd stopped briefly for snacks and water. We were about to drive 8 hours, and I was still starving. There was a lot of traffic, and I was stopped, waiting to pull out of the gas station. That's when I saw it. There was an accident up ahead. It looked horrific. A car had flipped across the meridian and struck a small Honda Civic. Accidents always got bad during tourist season down here. Sometimes it was road rage, sometimes drunk driving, sometimes just carelessness. Out of the small crushed Honda Civic, it looked like there was only one person that survived. A woman weeping was sitting on the side of the road watching as the ambulance was being loaded up with the bodies of her companions. But the ambulance pulled away. I suddenly realized something. She wasn't alone, because standing behind her was the man in white. Who is the man in white? If you want to see part 4, please let me know down below in the comments. At this point, I'm definitely invested. It seems our parents can be hiding secrets behind our back. So, stay safe out there.